Where science meets the sacred. Every day, he begins the journey as one who lights a lantern in an ancient library, reminding us that science and metaphysics were not always divided. There was a time when the study of the visible and the invisible drank from the same source, when the search for meaning was a sister to the search for method. Today, the noise of urgency often separates heart from rigor and mind from poetry. The mentor invites the listener to turn inward, to notice that reality is far wider than the sum of its parts, and that life itself longs to be understood with reverence, tenderness, and a precise kind of love. He describes this historical fracture as both wound and opportunity. The wound emerges when we reduce the world to what can be measured and forget that the measurable is only one face of the whole. The opportunity appears when we return rigor to the company of contemplation. It is not about denying science, but about honoring its beauty, while recalling the symbolic dimension that nourishes ethics, imagination, and courage. The mentor urges the listener to reject extremes. The path is a bridge. Upon this bridge, the spirit learns to converse with the laboratory, and the laboratory learns to listen to the spirit. Before moving forward, he asks for a visible and simple gesture: to like and subscribe to the channel. He explains, in third person, that this action is not superstition, but an intentional signature. When two attentions align in shared purpose, fields of energy couple, coherence increases. On the practical level, the gesture sustains content that uplifts. On the subtle level, it trains the body to decide consciously. It is a micro-commitment to one's own presence. By affirming, "I support what supports me," the listener signals to the inner universe that they choose to grow in harmony, with calm responsibility. He then offers an image. Reality has layers. There is the world of phenomena, measured with instruments, and the world of values, measured with the heart. Maturity is allowing one to illuminate the other. When value guides, method gains direction. When method confirms, value gains ground. This conversation fertilizes results over time. In quantum language, stable states of attention modulate probabilities. In metaphysical language, fidelity to meaning organizes what appears to be chance. Between them arises a kind of craftsmanship of life. To keep this bridge from being abstract, he introduces the thread that will guide the entire series: alchemy as pedagogy of transformation, and quantum science as grammar of possibility. Alchemy here is not a spectacle of metals, but a refinement of consciousness, stage by stage. Quantum science is not a promise of miracles, but a study of the delicate way in which the observer shapes the observed. The mentor insists, whoever learns to read symbols with humility and to measure states with rigor discovers a path of evolution that does not depend on fleeting euphoria, but on consistent friendship with their own truth. He closes this block with a work agreement. This journey will be slow, rich, and human. Slow, so the body may accompany the ideas. Rich, so metaphors do not become fragrance without nourishment. Human, so no theory forgets to care for what hurts. The listener is invited to carry a notebook, a calm breath, and courage for small adjustments. If the mind at some point asks for proof, method will provide exercises. If the heart asks for poetry, The metaphysics of meaning will remind why to continue. In this way, the path becomes both practical and beautiful. Alchemy as an inner map. He introduces alchemy as the art of refining the raw into the essential. It is not about furnaces or crucibles of metal, but about interior processes that transform fear into clarity, attachment into freedom, and distraction into focus. The ancient tradition speaks of stages that, when read symbolically, mirror human life itself: dissolve to see, separate to understand, combine to integrate, elevate to bless. The mentor explains that each stage requires a particular psychic climate and a discipline of breath, for the body is the living laboratory where symbols are verified and where habits are lifted into a new orbit. He reminds us that the first wisdom of the alchemist is to admit the raw chaos at the beginning. The prima materia of the path is nothing other than one's own confusion, the repeated roots that no longer nourish, the stories that tighten the chest. Dissolving means allowing rigid certainties to meet water. It is the willingness to take beliefs and let them rest until their hidden alloy is revealed. Instead of waging war with the mind, the practice is curiosity. Instead of shame, honesty. In this water, both impurities and nuggets float to the surface. The mentor urges written record. When things are given language, they no longer command in the dark. Separation, he says, is an act of refinement. We do not separate people, but forces. What is born of fear is placed in one basket. What is born of love, in another. Habits inherited without reflection go into a third. This triage restores precision to choices. Suddenly, what seemed urgent reveals itself as old noise. What seemed insignificant proves to be a seed. The mentor advises placing a core value beside each item, one that you truly wish to honor. Values are a compass. And without a compass, any wind becomes a convincing argument. Conjunction is the stage where the separated parts begin to converse again. The listener chooses two compatible elements: silence and study, movement and contemplation, service and art, and creates rituals where they reinforce one another. As aligned gestures are repeated, the psyche gains confidence, and discipline stops feeling like punishment and begins to feel like care. On the human level, alchemy is less about forcing rapid transformation and more about granting time for the right mixture to stabilize. The mentor reminds, stability is the discrete face of the miracle. Sublimation, finally, is to elevate without escaping. It means purifying intentions until they serve not only the self, but the wider good. It is when personal joy begins to include the flourishing of others, when one's work carries respect for the tempo of processes, when ambition is transmuted into contribution. To sublimate is not to become a saint, but to become an adult in presence, able to accomplish with tenderness. External results matter, of course, but the manner in which the field is treated along the way matters even more for what will be harvested in the end. He concludes the block by showing that the alchemical map is not a straight line but a spiral. In each cycle of life, we return again to dissolve, separate, combine, and sublimate, yet on subtler levels. Wisdom lies in recognizing the return not as failure, but as refinement. Whoever accepts the spiral movement learns to trust time, measuring progress, not by dramatic novelty, but by the quality of presence. The notebook becomes a faithful ally. Without it, memory distorts by romanticizing or demonizing. With it, reality reveals itself with gentle precision. The implicate order and listening to the invisible. The mentor introduces the idea that reality contains a subtle order not exhausted by what the senses perceive. He calls it the implicate order, a woven fabric of relations where information and form dance in hidden layers. In practice, it means that the visible is the unfolding of the invisible, and that small shifts of attention can reorganize patterns with astonishing efficiency. He invites the listener to train the art of listening to near silence, to notice the body's nuances, discrete coincidences, inner movements which, when honored, save energy and prevent costly shortcuts. He clarifies that listening to the invisible is not superstition, but attentive method. It requires humility, the willingness to verify, and the courage to adjust hypotheses. At each sign perceived, the question becomes, what value of mine is this event asking me to remember? What small action can I test in the next 72 hours to verify its meaning? The implicate order responds delicately, rarely with fireworks. The laboratory is daily life itself. Answers appear in conversations, dreams, and rhythms of the body. Those who learn to converse with life stop exhausting themselves by trying to push the river. To make this concrete, he proposes a notebook ritual with 3 columns: sign, meaning, action. Sign: what drew attention, either within or outside. Meaning: a hypothesis of significance aligned with one's values. Action: a simple step to verify. Then, return to note the results. Repetition trains the mind to think in cycles, not in fantasies. The world already overflows with fantasy. What it needs is honest cycles. The mentor reinforces: method does not kill wonder. Method protects wonder from the anxiety that corrodes it when we demand guarantees before taking the next step. He reminds us that implicate order does not erase chance, but enters into dialogue with it. Variables remain multiple, which is why practice requires tenderness with mistakes and celebration of successes. When a person fails with attention, they learn. When they succeed with arrogance, they unravel. Growth is cultivating a state of humble precision. A mind tuned in this way stops striving for absolute control and instead seeks quality of participation. Reality ceases to be a battlefield of struggle and becomes a workshop of meaning, where both hands and heart work together. As a personal testimony, he recalls times when he ignored subtle signs, a body that was tired, conversations repeating endlessly, dreams whispering of another road. The price came as a refined kind of discouragement, a sadness dressed so elegantly that no one outside could notice. When he returned to his notebook, the thread reconnected. Just 2 weeks of micro-adjustments were enough for hope to breathe again. There was no sudden miracle. There was respect for the rhythm that sustains discrete miracles. That respect, he says, is operational maturity. Poetry with method, soul with calendar. The block closes with an invitation. For 7 days, practice the triad of sign, meaning, action at least once per day. without skipping steps. It is not about collecting omens. It is about practicing dialogue. Those who converse with life learn to become co-authors, and co-authorship requires presence. Presence is not tension. It is a silent agreement between body, mind, and values. When that agreement stabilizes, the implicate order ceases to be a concept and becomes a climate. And in good climate, the harvest arrives in its time, with less waste and far more gratitude. Living mathematics, metaphor, and measure. He approaches mathematics not as a tyrant of certainties, but as the hidden music of the world. Proportions, rhythms, relationships, everything in reality inclines toward harmony. The mentor invites us to perceive the patterns that emerge when we honor time and space. Fixed windows for deep work, 90-day cycles for projects, intervals of rest between blocks. When the week is designed as if it were a musical score, the mind relaxes and the body collaborates. Numbers, seen this way, do not reduce mystery. They give it a house where it can manifest with elegance, cadence, and constancy. He suggests experimenting with proportions beauty in everyday life. 3 living priorities per quarter to avoid dispersion. 2 hours each week for pruning noise. 1 daily window for radical presence. The goal is not rigid discipline, but an aesthetic of a well-composed life. When the calendar reflects values, a person stops promising the impossible and ceases apologizing for the inevitable. From this emerges gentle precision, speaking less but fulfilling more, moving less but impacting better. Mathematics, when embraced as metaphor, trains the sense of boundary that protects the essential from erosion. For the creative field, he proposes the seed notebook, a single page each day for ideas, images, and questions, without the burden of immediate usefulness. At the end of a 12-week cycle, review, highlight patterns, and choose 3 seeds to cultivate. Statistically, few will bloom. Existentially, all will teach something vital about oneself. The method saves imagination from drowning in overstimulation. Without method, the mind becomes a noisy marketplace. With method, it becomes a garden that welcomes visitors at the right hour and escorts them out with dignity and joy. He offers an example of how measure safeguards affection. Important conversations deserve a set time and place, away from screens, beginning and ending with paced breathing. Half the time devoted to listening, half to speaking. When boundaries are clear, encounters flourish. The same applies to study. Closed blocks, honest goals, brief review at the end. Quality is born not from the intensity of a single day, but from the quiet power of consistency. The world rewards peaks. The soul longs for fertile plains. To water those plains is the craft of an artisan, not the stunt of an acrobat. The mentor warns of the risk of romanticizing mystical numbers while forgetting the simple counts that sustain life. Paying the hours of sleep, nourishment, and silence is spiritual mathematics of the highest order. Whoever steals from these accounts impoverishes their own vibration, then blames the universe for not responding. Yet the field responds best to those who treat themselves with respect. Thus, the most sacred spreadsheet is the one that ensures you remain human while you reach for the heights. This is the ethic of measure that heals, and without it, even noble pursuits collapse. He closes the block by reminding us that mathematics, metaphor, and measure form a trio that educates excess. Each in its own way prevents the inflation of ego and the slide into inertia. With them, steps turn into rhythm, ambition becomes service, results appear as natural consequence. A good life does not require a secret algorithm, it requires honest craftsmanship. When the ear grows accustomed to the music of enough, the heart stops crying out for spectacle and learns to give thanks for the right note at the right time. In such simplicity, the extraordinary finds its home. Quantum mind, observer, and state. He explains that what is often called the quantum mind is not a cinematic superpower, but rather a posture of awareness. The capacity to observe without rigidity, to choose in alignment with values, and to sustain states compatible with the reality one desires to bring forth. In practical terms, this means measuring the body honestly, aligning intention with integrity, reducing inner and outer noise, and repeating the gestures that actually work. When the quality of the observer changes, the observed pattern begins to shift. It is not absolute control. The world remains alive and free, but a refined collaboration. The mentor names this elegant operation, lightness joined with precision. He proposes training states on 3 interwoven layers. First, the physiological layer, quality sleep, gentle nourishment, fluid movement. Second, the attentional layer, windows free of screens, long breaths, brief silence at the end of each cycle. Third, the ethical layer, intention tied to genuine service, not the self-deception of inflated greatness. The resulting state gains stability, and with it, learning curves that are less painful. The person no longer confuses intensity with truth. Truth here is what remains standing once all noise has subsided. Sustaining this quality is the work of a loving adult, patient and consistent. The mentor offers an emergency protocol for noisy days. Step 1. Acknowledge without fighting, whispering inwardly, "Today I feel heavy." Step 2. Choose one minimal gesture of care, a slow walk, a glass of water, 5 lines in a notebook. Step 3. Delay major decisions. The field responds with gratitude when you refuse to sign contracts in the middle of a storm. This protocol does not infantilize. It empowers responsibility. By caring for the state before the target, you honor the instrument that plays the music. A tuned instrument produces beauty with less force and greater resonance. He shares an analogous story. For months he insisted on producing through exhaustion. The result was falling quality and the disappearance of joy. Only when he returned to the chain of state gesture result did clarity return. A single week of sleep and silence was enough for practical intelligence to re-emerge. It was not mystical inspiration, but physiology serving the subtle. The quantum mind does not deny the body. It integrates it. It does not hurry toward glory. It treasures sustainability. Growth in this manner may look slower on the ego's calendar, yet it is faster on the soul's clock, which measures by coherence and consistency. He warns that states cannot be sustained in isolation. The environment must collaborate. Light, sounds, relationships, media. One poorly designed habit can sabotage hours of presence. That is why he insists on engineering the everyday, mapping environments, setting clear agreements, building escape routes for inevitable relapses. The goal is not to seal oneself off from life, but to welcome it without dissolving into it. When the environment becomes an ally, the field no longer wastes energy fighting walls. Instead, it channels that power into creating, serving, and resting. The most beautiful productivity is born from an unarmed heart. The block concludes with a simple yet profound reminder. The state is the way you arrive. Projects, people, and ideas all perceive this arrival. If you arrive whole, even if tired, the encounter still has a chance. If you arrive fragmented and hurried, even the best opportunity crumbles. For this reason, the mentor advises, treat the state as priority and the result as consequence. And when life inevitably disorganizes everything, as it always will, begin again small. Small and repeated is the time's favorite way of weaving its discrete miracles. Environments, people, and the field. He investigates the ecology of the field, how places, objects, and people modulate vibration and attention. A visually uncluttered space reduces inner noise. A conversation that begins with questions of meaning expands horizons. A clean playlist saves cognitive energy. The mentor suggests a loving inventory. 3 environments that uplift, 3 that drain, 3 people who expand, 3 who contract. The point is not to judge people, but to measure effect. With honest measurement, time and proximity can be rebalanced. The field learns to trust those who organize with tenderness. He proposes what he calls Wednesday pruning, 60 intentional minutes each week to remove 1 item of noise and add 1 element of functional beauty. It might mean silencing notifications, donating what no longer serves, reorganizing a desk, or opening a window for fresh air. The aim is to improve by just 1% each week. In a matter of months, the entire place changes its climate without fuss or spectacle. The body begins to recognize home as an ally, and the mind reconnects work with flow rather than with struggle. Small accumulated shifts are worth more than rare and grandiose overhauls. For relationships, he offers the pact of ethical conversations. Avoid speaking about those who are absent. Begin meetings with questions like, what gave you life this week? And what drained you? The tone shifts immediately. When connection is rooted in presence and responsibility, friendship becomes a laboratory for virtue and collaboration gains a gentle precision. The mentor reminds us that limits are also care. To say no respectfully protects the sacred yes that honors. Shared fields flourish where truth is possible. Where it is not, quiet distance becomes an act of health. He shares an analogous story. Moving his writing to a bright, ventilated cafe transformed months of block into honest pages. There was no magic in the address. There was coherence between environment and intention. The simple ritual, walking there, pouring water, opening a notebook, trained the body to know that in this place, words would flow. Within 3 weeks, creativity returned as a frequent visitor. The external world does not dominate us, but it does educate us. When geography serves purpose, the soul works with more joy and less waste. The mentor insists that field engineering does not replace moral courage. Without values, design becomes mere fetish. With values, even the humblest room becomes a temple for work and rest. It is the quality of the heart that gives aura to the space, not expensive objects. For this reason, he suggests a discrete altar of intention, a phrase, a stone, a photograph that recalls commitment, not to theatricalize spirituality, but to remember, in the midst of ordinary days, the why that sustains the how when desire falters. The block closes with a proposal for 2 weeks of conscious ecology. Choose one environment to elevate and one relationship to cultivate with clear presence. Measure before and after, mood, focus, kindness. Write down what changed. The exercise trains the eye to see the relationship between field and fruit. Those who learn to garden their own surroundings harvest operational calm, recurring creativity, and a quiet joy that does not depend on spectacle. Maturity begins when a person chooses to become a guardian of the climate in which their soul works. Resistance, shadow, and the ethics of no. He devotes this block to the subtle, elegant saboteurs, productive procrastination, endless study without practice, perfectionism dressed up as excellence. Resistance is not mere laziness. It protects the parts of us that are terrified of change. Rather than declaring war, the mentor proposes negotiation. Name the fear hiding behind the habit, the fear of being seen, of disappointing, of failing. Thank it for its past protection, and then redesign its role. He teaches the rule of 3. 3 living priorities, 3 weekly rituals, 3 daily gestures. Everything else is a list of grace, not of guilt. Focus naturally returns to what is essential. To train the power of no, he offers entire sentences, clean and without unnecessary justifications. Thank you for the invitation. This quarter I have chosen fewer fronts, so I can go deeper. I can contribute a brief review by Friday, but I cannot take on the execution. I prefer not. This does not align with my current direction. Language creates reality. Over time, the environment learns your contours and begins to offer opportunities that are more coherent. No ceases to be a weapon and becomes care. Care for yourself, care for others, and care for the work that truly deserves to be born. He explains attentional entropy as the leaking of energy through lack of boundaries. When everything is urgent, nothing matures. The suggested technique is to close windows, limit sources, define hours, silence notifications, and guard mornings for what matters most. The goal is not to become an iron monk, but to protect the gentle part of the self that creates. The mentor reminds us, creativity needs a space to play without witnesses. Without that space, the sacred grows timid, and the work is born pale. With protected space, the work emerges colorful, breathing on its own, unapologetically. As an example, he recounts a period when he confused movement with progress. His days were full of meetings, calls, and constant exchanges, but little actual creation. The solution was painfully simple. 1 daily hour of radical presence with a single project, everything else turned off. In 6 weeks, a cycle was completed. Self-confidence did not come from motivational slogans, but from evidence. The body believes what it sees repeated. When the field perceives commitment, it responds with pathways. When it perceives only haste, it responds with stumbles. The universe, he says, has both memory and humor. He addresses guilt as a recurring noise that surfaces when new boundaries are drawn. Guilt does not need a courtroom of judgment, but a sensory embrace. Breathe, feel, name it, thank the old protection, and then choose again. This sequence restores autonomy. Practicing it, the listener discovers that saying no to excess is in truth saying yes to a life that can be sustained without romanticized self-denial. The shadow, once integrated, becomes an ally of care. It does not vanish, but it loses command. The adult that emerges may be less spectacular, but is far more trustworthy, both to oneself and to others. The block ends with a blessing of precision. May your no be elegant and firm. May your discipline be gentle and faithful. May your focus never trample tenderness. Resistance will always whisper, but you will learn to choose despite it. Maturity is not the absence of inner conflict. It is the ability to sign good decisions even when parts of you long for shortcuts. And when you slip, because you will, begin again small. Small and repeated is time's favorite metric for teaching slowly what is meant to last. Verification protocols and the 72-hour windows. He systematizes learning into simple protocols so that the poetic soul may find grounding in the calendar. First, every strong intention must take form within 72 hours. A sent email, an open sketch, a scheduled conversation. The goal is not to finish everything, but to communicate to the field that the choice is serious. Second, every interpreted sign asks for a concrete measure. If the meaning is, I need silence, then the action becomes 30 minutes without a screen tomorrow at 7 a.m. Third, every completed action deserves a brief review. What was learned, what will be adjusted, what should be repeated. He suggests a visible board with 3 tracks: intention, 72-hour action, evidence. Each week, review it in silence, with a warm drink in hand, honoring the body that lived those days. Elegance lies in keeping only a few items and fulfilling them fully. When everything is labeled as a priority, nothing truly breathes. The protocol is not a tyrant. It is the godparent of continuity. Small victories accumulated over time generate operational confidence, and that confidence reduces the restless hunger for external validation. The field, like an old friend, learns to recognize and reward consistency. For creative projects, he recommends contemplative sprints of 12 weeks. 3 clear goals, broken down into weekly steps, with quiet celebrations at the end of each cycle. If something becomes blocked, return to the triad of sign, meaning, action to unlock gently. He reminds us that haste confuses, but deadlines educate. The difference is in the climate. Deadlines born of love for the work bring structure and grace, while rush born of fear of judgment crushes vitality. Where there is love, there is time. Where there is fear, there are schedules that suffocate. The adult learns to choose only timelines the heart can inhabit. He includes a relational protocol, agreements of presence. Before difficult conversations, 3 minutes of shared breathing. During, turns of speaking. At the end, a practical gesture to seal it. The method reduces emotional noise and builds a memory of honest dialogue. Relationships are fields, and fields need arrangements to ensure that music can be played without harm. The mentor emphasizes that love without structure exhausts. Structure without love hardens. The middle path is effective architecture, soft boundaries where genuine feelings may grow. As safeguard, he introduces the monthly clearing day, reviewing accumulated files, tasks and commitments, and then choosing with courage what will truly be carried forward. What will not continue is closed with gratitude. Phantom projects silently consume energy. Giving them a farewell is field hygiene. After the clearing, mark the moment with a small celebration. Walk under the sun, cook something simple, or write a letter to yourself. The soul memorizes that organizing can also be a feast, and thereafter it cooperates with less resistance. The block concludes with an operable summary. Clear intention linked to value and service, minimal action within 72 hours, evidence written down, weekly review, and monthly closure. It is a small structure, repeated with elegance. The extraordinary works well with honest routines. The mentor smiles and reminds us, when you treat your life as a work in progress, reality responds with resources, encounters, and ideas proportional to your care. Magic appreciates a schedule, and schedules in turn welcome magic when it comes with responsibility. Practices of state and imagination with roots. He proposes practices designed to consolidate states that align with the chosen direction. In the morning, a 7-minute routine. Record mood in 2 short lines. Read a paragraph of anchoring and choose the minimum step of the day. Between working blocks, pause for 3 deep breaths to shift attentional skin. At night, practice precise gratitude by naming 3 specific facts. Repetition carves favorable grooves in the brain and softens the heart. After 4 weeks, states become more predictable and relapses less dramatic. Good predictability is the nervous system's form of rest. For imagination, he suggests somatic rehearsals. Visualize yourself embodying the desired state, not in grandiose cinematic scenes, but through the body in daily life, posture, rhythm, facial expression. Then list 3 daily choices that align with this state. Imagination with roots gives structure to desire and protects it from becoming empty fantasy. The mind learns that vision without step becomes frustration, and step without vision becomes a march stripped of poetry. Together, vision and step transform the routine into an intimate stage where the sacred and the practical share the same table, peacefully. He introduces an exercise in silent beauty, reserving 5 minutes to contemplate something that exists only for its own sake. A tree, the late afternoon sky, the rising steam of tea. This gratuitous gaze regenerates the part of us that is tired of always being a tool. Paradoxically, when we stop instrumentalizing everything, creativity visits us more frequently. The world was not made only to be used, it was made to be loved. And love restores vigor to technical gestures, giving them texture and goodwill. For dense days, he offers a rescue sequence: water, air, ground, word. Drink 1 glass of water slowly, breathe 5 full cycles. Place your feet on the floor consciously. Write 10 uncensored lines. In 15 minutes, the body remembers it is alive and that there is choice. The mentor repeats, do not confuse storm with destiny. Climates pass. Whoever learns to protect the small flame on windy days discovers the courage to neither dramatize nor desert. It is this flame that keeps the work alive until the sun returns. He suggests a communal practice, a weekly sense conversation with someone trustworthy, exchanging 3 questions. What gave me life? What drained me? What adjustment will I make? No advice from the other, no saviorism, only presence and mirroring. Relationships like these regenerate hope and restore sanity when the mind invents monsters. Experience shows that 2 attuned fields often give rise to answers that would have taken months to surface alone. Wisdom enjoys simple company and quiet laughter that remind us life is still good. On the block ends with a tender reminder. Practice does not exist to turn you into a machine of high performance. It exists to remind you that you are already worthy of love while still learning. Mature spirituality does not divide the world into illuminated victors and weary losers. It offers tools of care so each person can find their own cadence. At the right tempo, life begins to sing again. When the song reappears, work flows, rest truly restores, and the soul sleeps peacefully, ready to awaken once more with gentleness. Closing: beauty, precision, and service. In the final block, the mentor gathers the golden thread, the reunion between rigor and poetry. Metaphysics reminded us of the why. Quantum science illuminated the how. Alchemy revealed the path of refinement. Measure the body. Declare intentions tied to service. Read signs with humility. And take small action within 72 hours. This is the backbone. The rest are flowers that time itself will open when it meets a patient gardener. Nothing here promised shortcuts. It promised lived method. And lived method is faithful more than it is dazzling. Faithful to what matters, and faithful to what fits in the hands of now. He speaks of the ethics of beauty, not the performative kind of appearance, but the beauty that shows up when the right gesture meets the right time. Beauty as the consequence of coherence, not as an objective that suffocates. Precision, then, is beauty viewed up close. Words that say only what is necessary, choices that respect boundaries, projects that actually fit into real life. Whoever falls in love with both beauty and precision learns to work with serene joy. The soul stops demanding spectacle and begins to desire elegance, the kind that does not shout, yet still convinces. As a final commitment, he suggests adopting a 90-day cycle, 3 intentions tied to value and service, 3 sustaining practices, 3 indicators of both effective and concrete progress, a monthly review, a clearing of noise, and a small celebration to seal the rhythm. Such a cycle restores authorship without breeding paranoia about control. Reality remains mysterious, and yet becomes more legible. Synchronicities no longer appear as concessions from distant gods, but emerge as daily language between you and life itself. A dialogue of mutual trust that never abandons responsibility. He honors the shadows that walked alongside the journey, resistances, guilt, the hunger for shortcuts. He thanks them for their protection and gently invites them to rest. Maturity does not demonize inner parts. It integrates them, gives them new roles, and offers them new employment. By embracing complexity, the seeker becomes more trustworthy to themselves, to their loved ones, and to the work they are here to accomplish. The field trusts those who trust their own process, not because they never fall, but because they always return to center with honesty and tenderness. Such quiet constancy is a profound strength. For tomorrow, he leaves simple instructions. Begin small, protect your state, tend to your field, honor time. Write down what you wish to serve and whom you wish to serve. Take some action within 72 hours. Say an elegant no that frees space. Organize a drawer. Call someone who uplifts you. Walk beneath the morning sun. The extraordinary dwells in these small gestures. They create ground upon which the subtle can find a path into matter. This is how honest dreams become commitments, and commitments become works that nourish more than they decorate. He concludes with a serene invitation. Walk as a co-author, tending to the field that tends to you. If something in your chest reorganized during this journey, honor it with a minimal gesture today. If an intention gained a name, write it down and give it its first verifying step. If an environment asked for pruning, offer it air. The spirituality that endures is the one that fits in both calendar and heart. Between beauty and precision, choose both. Between haste and tenderness, choose tenderness. The rest, life itself will speak in the right time, in the quiet language of signs. And so, see you in the next video, with more information on everything that involves growing, evolving, transforming, and manifesting. See you soon.